So today's guest, sometimes you have these pre-conversation that just goes down a rabbit hole. I can't remember how long we talked, but it was a really good conversation. And I'm very glad that actually Sarah reached out to herself actually to ask, is there an opportunity for us to talk? Because I have a very important message, because I didn't really know Sarah before now for some reason. I don't know. I thought I knew everyone I should know in UK hospitality, but Sarah I haven't met, but there's always somebody you haven't met. And our conversation really put a mark on me, and I'm sure today's conversation will as well. And you should follow Sarah on LinkedIn, and we'll give all that information later. She shares some very interesting reflection about life, leadership, business, and so on. So welcome to the show, Sarah.
I'm very excited. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Sarah, for people that hasn't, like me, met you, what is like the story, the journey that led you to now you're helping other leaders to become a better version of themselves?
Great question. Thank you for asking that. So I have been in hospitality for 30 years. I started out behind a bar in a pub in Chelsea, and I quickly was promoted to general manager. I was the youngest landlady in London at the time. It was the early 90s. It was so much easier to run a business then than it is now. There was really no health and safety. I had a very absent area manager, and I was really left to it to make all the mistakes. And I think actually it's probably still one of my favorite jobs. Like, I was living above a pub in the heart of Chelsea, where I could eat and drink for free pretty much in my early 20s. And I was banking probably £900 a month, but it was pocket money, and I had no responsibility. So it was a great job. I did that for a few years. And then I felt like I was a little fish in a very big pond. It was part of Bath's Leisure Retail at the time. So I was really interested in working for a smaller business. So then I started working with Quinian Barrow wine bars, who had 13 wine bars in the square mile, beautiful businesses, Monday to Friday, which is a real gift. So I started with them in 2000. And that's when I really learned about leadership and people. And I was fortunate enough to be on an incredible, which is way above before their time, incredible leadership program with them, where I got a real sense of who I am as a leader and the space that I create, and the impact I could have on others. So I left there as operations director in 2007. Then I worked with Pret for 3 years, which was delightful and delicious and a perfect example of how success is a system, how discipline with the right people can grow an incredible business. So I did that 3 years, looking after 60 of their shops in the city. I was head of the city at the end of that. And then I went to work for Mitchells and Butlers again, which was Bath's, it was almost like full circle. So Bath's was the original job with a massive brewery, then back to Mitchells and Butlers, where I worked with Castle pubs, which have got 100 pubs, gastro pubs across the UK. Latterly Vintage, where I ran 100 pubs for them. And then, but again, a great example of how systems and a larger scale, how you influence people was just a completely different muscle to flex. Then children, my beautiful children, 10 a million, 2015. So we're getting close to where we are now. And then at the end of that, within 2 years, I was really keen to get back into business. So I had 2 years with the kids. And then I was invited to run one of Bieber's portfolio startup businesses. I grew that to 5 businesses. And then I stepped down from doing that job at the beginning of 2023 and started up 9 Yards Coaching, which is what I'm doing now.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. Is there one thing that's led you to this? Because, of course, it's really interesting. You're coming from huge responsibility, complex leadership decisions that needs to be made, to now being, on your own, but actually trying now to help other people in the situation you were in once.
I think that's the point, actually. It was my remarkable coaches that inspired me to consider the impact that I could have in a different way. And I've always been fascinated by the human potential and how different individuals can show up. I'm naturally curious and very intuitive and quite drawn to supporting people throughout my career. Like I've always really, really enjoyed that part of business. Mostly just that part alone, and just how we can have great performance through our people. So because I was lucky enough to have these incredible coaches, and I'd actually been on an immersive weekend with one of my coaches, where sometimes it happens with coaching, like it's not until after the actual session or after the experience that you realize that something's really landed. And it was after a night of processing, after this immersive weekend I had, where I just thought, actually, this isn't my gig anymore. And I felt like I wanted to have an impact in a different way. And when you stand in your truth with courage, like you just have to make that decision. And I also craved this balance. I had been pretty absent mum from age 2 to age 8 by my own, doing. I had decided that was how I was going to play. And I was always in, I think, fight or flight, first checking the phone first thing in the morning and, looking at the daily sales, throwing breakfast down the kids, getting them to school, nanny would pick them up after school. And that was my choice. And I loved it. But I also recognized that I'd like to play a different game for the next couple of years. And I decided I wanted to set up a coaching business because I love being able to have that impact, and the opportunity to have an impact on others, how my coaches had on me, was just such an incredible opportunity for me to consider. And also that by the time my kids go to secondary school in 2 years' time, they won't want me to pick them up from school anymore, So I'm largely term time and school hours only. I mean, I still manage to do 40 hours a week because I'm available in the evenings to coach clients as well as during the day. But it was my coaches, it was the craving of the balance that I wanted to be able to have an impact in the space to create what I hoped would be able to, grow our industry quite differently than how it is currently being grown.
Is there like one point on your journey where you thought that has been really informative about you going this way? Is there like one conversation, one experience?
I don't remember any kind of massive aha moments. I don't remember any kind of like, other than that overnight thinking of knowing this isn't like, and I must have been considering it, subconsciously somewhere on a different level. I must have been thinking this isn't my gig anymore, and the real interesting part of this is how much identity I attach to that role, how much of my identity I attach to my work, and and the validation too that you can seek from others by, Sarah, can I run something by you today? Or when you're the managing director, everyone kind of wants to speak to you, and when you move away and you no longer have a team, you are and you'll know this yourself, you're suddenly the marketing director, the IT director, the finance director, or all of these things. And whilst I'd been invested in by a company, it was never my own, if you like. Like I felt like it was my own, but this is really my own business. So that journey of discovery of who this newer version of myself is, when you take everything away, the daily sales, the write-ups, the social media, the validation, the team, when you remove all of that and you're left with who you truly are, has been probably the greatest journey for me personally. So to answer your question, I think it's the byproduct, if you like, of that weekend I had, and the journey since that's just been the most transformational.
And thank you for sharing that, because it's really interesting. I've had another conversation recently, and there's an ongoing one where the identity is attached to a job or a job role, and how is the world going to look at me if I'm not doing that anymore? And I said, the world really don't care. it's all in your head. It's like, because as soon as you move down, somebody else will step up or something else happens and the things will move on. It's not like it's not important if you're the CEO or not. If it's important for you, it's important, but not for the world in a way. And actually you need to do what feels right. As the difficult decision you made, because also the scary decision, because then what, even though might know where you want to go and do, but how they're going to do it. I'm going to get, clients, blah, 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 blah. So I think it's really, really interesting with the identity. And I think really as you move through your career, you suddenly find out that actually it's more important not to have too much identity in it, because it's of course good, it drives you. But if it's like you can't switch out of it, it has impact on your life and your health and all those things. So a really, really, really interesting conversation. And I think we'll probably come back to that, because it all ties into that in a way, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you something. So as you set up the coaching business now, what is like your philosophy? What is your approach? Because, we all have different approaches and what works for us. Is there any like deeper thinking about how you approach the coaching you're doing with clients now?
So it's really a philosophy around a growth mindset versus that energy of a fixed mindset. So I encourage clients to embrace challenges and persist even when there's setback, in the face of kind of setbacks. There's that kind of holding up a mirror, and just really helping clients to develop new skills and different perspectives, and often through kind of self-reflection and feedback and experimentation. So the one piece is about a growth mindset and surrendering and being aware of, you're really self-aware and aware of yourself and how you show up. And then the other philosophy is around this authentic leadership. And we know that authentic leadership is rooted, or great leadership, should I say, is rooted in authenticity. And where leaders align their actions with their true values and beliefs, that's where we are unstoppable. So I help clients to discover and be able to express their authentic selves. So really be true to who they are, because quite often in leadership, we can watch what others are doing and feel like that's what true leadership is. But when we're really in tune with ourselves, because we've created that self-awareness, we're in integrity and we're in consistency, and that consistency between our internal and our external values, that's where the magic really happens in coaching and in leadership, is when we're really true to ourselves. So I coach around that, and that's my philosophy: growth mindset, and about being a really authentic leader.
Yeah, and I guess, I don't know, I think for me that has been a long journey, and I still, I don't think I'm done. It's like a masterpiece in the making, because every time you get to a certain point of awareness, you suddenly find out there's so much else, or the situation has changed so dramatically, because you never put the feet down in the same place of the river, as they say in Stoic philosophy. It has always changed. And suddenly the environment have changed. So therefore you need again to adapt now, or learn something new about yourself, how you react to the situation. How do you see that as you're working with clients? Because I think you're spot on. That's really where you need to get into. But I really struggle with that as a leader still.
Mm-hmm. I guess it's part of what I was saying earlier, in that surrender of recognizing there is always another layer. Like, we're never going to get there. Like, it's that kind of like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? It's continuous. We are always defining, redefining, improving, tweaking, a little bit left, a little bit right. And isn't that part of the journey, of just constantly being just 1% better every day? And when we can sit behind and go, as a personal example, it was last September when I launched the business, and my first LinkedIn post, I probably thought about every day for about a month, because it was exposure, it was telling the world that I was doing something. It was all that fear of judgment, and then you look back and, I'm posting almost daily now. It's just recognizing that. And I'm sure it's for you, Michael, if you were to look back on a year ago, you probably don't recognize that person. And when we're comfortable in knowing that it's always going to feel uncomfortable. It's always going to feel a little bit unsafe sometimes, but it's the journey and it's the process towards that can be really interesting. And that's where the growth can happen and the magic can happen.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. Yeah, because how often do we actually stop up and reflect about how we have changed, because we're just in it, so we don't see that how much we have moved. And actually, one of the powerful things to do, my mentor got me to do earlier this year, was actually looking a year back on LinkedIn of what I've been doing. Because suddenly you see what you're promoting, and then suddenly, oh, did I really do that? That's really crap, because you progress the 1%, you become 1% better, hopefully, at doing it. You invest more time in it. Listening to your first podcast conversation, you're going to be number 380, I think, 280, sorry. And I was listening to it a couple of weeks ago, the first one. I was just been like, oh, that was really wasn't that bad, but you are not bad. You just, at that point, you were there and then you move on. I'm not saying I'm great either now. I'm still lots to be done, lots to learn around that. So it's really, really interesting exercise. I would say the audience could go and do that valuation of how you have progressed and celebrate that, because that's a beautiful thing,
Yeah.
And we often don't do that.
We often don't do that. And I don't know whether it was before we came on the podcast or it's been during, so forgive me, but there was a point, didn't you say, where, that nobody's watching.
Yeah, nobody cares.
Nobody cares. Who else is looking back on your first podcast? Who else is looking back on your first LinkedIn? Nobody cares. They're thinking more about what they're doing, So that fear of judgment that we sometimes have of others can quite often be the finger pointing in. It's the judgment we have of ourselves, and whenever we find ourselves going into judgment for other people, it is quite often us seeing that as a mirror and reflecting it back on ourselves, and to point the finger in and go, okay, what's going on here? Because, in meetings, how we show up can often be in judgment. There might be people listening to this now, for an example, that would be like, God, I don't quite agree with that, and critique it, which is totally fine. We're allowed to have an opinion, but understanding that sometimes that judgment can be a judgment that we might have of ourselves too.
Yeah, and I think also it's very interesting if you turn it around, because I had this conversation the other day. Even, let's say I have an opinion about something, and I put it on the table with you, and you disagree, but you think it's an attack on you. But it's not. It's just my opinion about the situation. It's not about you. I just don't believe this is important right now, or this is what we should do. And actually, instead of just listening to what's actually been said, it's about, I didn't present the right thing, or didn't do the right thing. And it becomes that. And that's something I really had to struggle with myself through leadership as well. Especially when I presented something with, I prepared really well. I spent a lot of time. And then somebody senior says, but Michael, have you thought about and the whole thing collapses. And it's not because he's saying you've done a bad job, or she's saying it. She's just saying that something has changed and you probably worked very hard to get here, but now the world has changed. We need to go in a different direction. I really struggled with that, because I took it like I hadn't done my job properly, or and it's not about that. Actually, they just moved on. They already gone past where you are, and there's a new problem to solve, and therefore this is not really important. And I think and then you judge yourself again, and they hadn't thought about they just want to move on. Just forget about that and let's move on and solve that. Put your energy over there. But again, and it takes both ways to understand that mechanism in a way, and how powerful it actually can be in a room.
And what you've described there is how we can set it's called a reticular activated system, where we set our antennae out to look for these things, these things that might be, it's like when you want to buy a new new car, you see it everywhere. You see that a car everywhere. Like, we set ourselves to look for the negative stuff. And in coaching too, quite often clients would come to me with their gaps, which there's nothing wrong with that at all. But to be able to do strengths-based coaching as well, and understand, okay, so what is it what from your past experiences and the tools that you've got and your expertise, how can you use that to supercharge this challenge that you've got, rather than it feeling like there's always something that we've got to be fixing? It's like, what have you got now that you can use? What's in your toolkit to help you through this challenge that you might have?
Yeah, and that leads very beautiful over to what is it like you would like to, change? What is your big mission in your new coaching business? What is it like you would like to see changing in the hospitality industry? What is that's going to be different when it all comes together and you have done the massive impact?
Yeah. Well, I'm on this mission to create a new reality where coaching and mentoring is a way of life in our industry. And it is to some extent at the moment. But if you imagine a world where, and coaching will be ubiquitous in 15 years' time, I really believe everyone is going to have a coach. Everyone have a coach or a mentor at some level, at leadership level. But if you imagine a world where every leader has a coach and a mentor as part of their growth and leadership development journey to support them throughout their career, the impact would be huge. Like, it would be far reaching. And typically coaches and mentors are called upon when things have gone wrong already, or there's a career transition, or, we're facing performance challenges. If we turn that into more proactive coaching, and we also don't reserve it just for the C-suite, because typically it's been the grown-ups that have had a coach or a mentor, and it's perceived as being really expensive, and it really doesn't have to be. And if we continue to miss this trick by not focusing on our middle management with coaching, which are the ops managers, the ops directors, the marketing managers, the kind of guys in the leadership team, they're the ones that are going to be our future senior leaders. They're the ones that will be our future CEOs. And our ops team in particular, from what I've seen and from the clients that I'm working with, are the ones that are feeling the most forgotten and the most isolated. And it is the hardest job. Like, you are the so I can swear. You are the pink filter, the shit filter, if you like, for all the stuff that comes from the grown-ups. And you're the influencer, you're the cascader, you're the motivator, you're the leader, you're the influencer. So if you touch as the ops manager, ops director, you're touching every single person in that business, that general manager and their team. If you're firing on all cylinders, if you're completely aware of yourself, if you're aware of the space you create as a leader, if you're in tune with the authenticity, if you're in tune with the impact, if you can self-regulate yourself, then the impact on our businesses would be absolutely huge. But when we're isolated as leaders, which I believe a lot of our ops managers are, then we revert to type and we play small and we do the job. We go to the meetings, we clear the email inbox. We do the budgets, we get the stuff done, but we're really capped at what our potential can be. And it's not everyone. There are some amazing ops managers that are, will not need a coach or a mentor. And there are some amazing businesses that are investing in that level of middle management too. But there are also some that aren't, and there is quite a gap there.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting what you said as well, that it doesn't come in too late. In my experiences, that often you put help in when the damage is already happening. So you're already, in principle, a very good one is burnout when you talk about that management layer, because the pressure is extreme. There's this ongoing conflict with the grown-ups and then the children, you can almost say, from the bottom, and they all want something and you have to serve them all. You're in service of all these people. And, often you are on the go. So you may be moving from one location to other, especially an ops manager role, what I've done myself. And you are literally also on the phone nonstop. So when you're not in situ. You're talking with somebody to solve another problem. So your brain also never gets time to settle and actually reflect on what's going on, what's going well. And then suddenly you hit that wall. That's what I seen, when I was an ops director and actually forgot about investing in that and then got it up to date. And it costs some money. Yes, it's an investment, but what is saved in problems down the road, of things, because in a way, they often got the confidence to come and talk with the ops director, me, about the challenge instead of just let it go, because they've already prepared with their coach. And the coach was not somebody that was part of the organization. It was an external person, because there was no commitment from that coach, but they were allocated time. And quickly, as you say, some of them very quickly found out, it's not really for me. I need something else. And then you just go and do that, and they're fine. And then at some point, they're going to come and say, could I have some coaching like so and so, because I actually think I need a bit of help now. And of course, you can coach yourself as the ops director, but you don't have the time to it, really. That's the reality. Very little. It's really going to be drip, drip, drip coaching, because you might be responsible for 50 units. So sitting down with an ops manager once a week, coaching is not going to happen. So I think I've been asked often, why don't you just do it yourself? I could, but that's not really the point. I said it's not going to work, because again, there will always be something you don't share, and something doesn't need to be shared with your boss because it's not really relevant for the job performance. So yeah, that was just my thoughts on what you said. And I totally agree with you. There's a huge gap there in the general, in hospitality. And it's been rough for some years now, and there's still some time to go. So it's still relevant to do this. And there's going to be much more change as the world changes around us.
Yeah. And that psychological safety you talk about is huge. If you're in a room with somebody, whether it's virtually or it's in person, that if you're a great coach, you go in with no judgment. You go in as the cleanest person in the room. And when you're in that position as a coach, the person that you're with can't go anywhere else other than vulnerability. You can't really go anywhere else other than getting under the skin. And if you have a skilled coach that can write the right questions and really listen to what's going on and observe the body language and hear the stories and hold up the mirror, then there is no other way. And this isn't, for complete clarity, this is not a sales pitch. I can't coach everyone in the industry. There's too many people. There's only one of me. I'm not the right person for everyone in the industry, because it's really important to have a coach that's absolutely right for you. And people aren't going to be the right people for me, because a ticket to play to work with me is, are you prepared to work really hard? Are you prepared to get uncomfortable? Because I can't, in good conscience, take your money off you unless you're prepared to do the deep work. Because this is a transformation. If you're after this, then are you prepared to do the deep work? Because coaching can be seen as this kind of like touchy-feely, just asking a few questions, a few awkward silences. It's hard graft, but if you're prepared to do the work and invest, then it can be really, really transformational. So yeah, there are lots of different ways to skin this cat. There could be contra deals between different businesses. So one big business matches another big business. Pret, Manger, Mitchells and Butlers, I'm only mentioning them because I used to work with them both. If they swap coaches, if you like, between those organizations and provide coaching for leaders within their organizations, then you would create that psychological safety. People would feel like they were able to open up to a coach, and it wouldn't cost any money because it would be a contra deal. Or there's training people internally to give coaching if that isn't something that would be interesting. It could be imagine if every leader had a coaching container or a coach as part of their annual package. That's huge to have somebody that, so every year that you could help to focus on your own bespoke development, which is different than sheep dipping into leadership courses, which is different from, which is all great. That stuff's required. But to have somebody to help you supercharge yourself is just a very different way of igniting some super personal development, individual personal development.
Yeah, and I guess you have to have a space to get the dust to settle in a way, because all the things that's going on, somebody that can help you unpack that pattern in a way. You're talking about the thought pattern people have. If we just stay a bit, because you talked about transformation before, and I wrote that down. What is the typical, what is some of the transformation you've seen in this first year that you work with clients? What is that you see when they, I guess, if they stay on, but some like typical things that happens as people that goes in maybe the first time they have a coach? What are typical happening there in your view?
I mean, one of the first things I do with everyone is a complimentary 90-minute deep dive into understanding their individual values. We're all very good at kind of reading off our company values. Do we understand what our own individual values are? We do a wheel of life, which you're probably aware of, which is like a pizza and spirituality. They rank themselves on the wheel of life, and we establish what their goals are. And at that stage too, there is a commitment to some kind of foundation. And what I mean by that is starting by committing to something that you will do on a daily basis to choose yourself. Now, that could be mindfulness. And when I say mindfulness, it doesn't need to be the Zen and the meditation. It could be going on a walk without your phone and any distractions. It could be out in nature. It could be belly breathing. It could be mindfulness is simply being able to observe your mind. It doesn't have to be the kind of chime sort of thing. So it could be mindfulness. It could be committing to journaling. It could be committing to doing a cold shower every day, but something that they're happy to commit to be able to lay the foundations of being able to build that self-awareness. And when you start to observe your mind, which is mainly what this is it's always a game of me versus me. But when you start to observe your mind, then you start to see things. So because of those early, and then we just stack the goals and we stack the structures and we stack the foundations, but they master one over a length of time. And then I'll invite them to add another foundation to help build their self-awareness. But because of that, there can be a whole range of different transformations of people observing how they're showing up in meetings, how they might be getting in their own way, how they're seeing. One thing I've noticed is, how leaders can often use imposter syndrome as a label to keep themselves small. So it might be I was really nervous in that meeting, or that's my imposter syndrome. And it might be your imposter syndrome, but it's also just nerves. And could it just be energy too? And could it just be growth? Could imposter syndrome just be it's you growing, And if you're feeling like an imposter, then that's great, because it means that you're doing something that, you shouldn't be doing. So I've seen this, or you should be doing, should I say. So I've seen this kind of observing a labeling of things like imposter syndrome that then would be able to get some transformation. But one story to share with you for a success from a client is one client came to me asking me to get her board ready. So she was a head of department and she was being nudged to be the finance director, really wanted to be the finance director in this business, and to say, get me board ready. I want to be able to play full out when I'm in the boardroom and, understand how I communicate, how I show up, how I manage expectations, all of that. So it was a really clear brief, and we it was a great start to the journey. But then when we got to session kind of 3, in this 6 months, it's a six session, 6-month coaching container. When we got to session 3, because we'd done all the values work and she was really coming home to kind of who she was and how she wanted to show up and the influence, she realized she didn't want the job. And it was her expectation. And sometimes the company too, is that was the natural next step. That was a thing I should be doing. I should move from head of department to director, and then I'll rule the world one day, that kind of, trajectory. But actually, was it really the outcome? I mean, the company was sponsoring this, the coaching. Was it the outcome that they hoped for? Not. Did it save them a shed load of heartache, money, all of that for both sides in the future? 100%. So that is a way of, we think we know what we want. And until we're provided an environment where we get to really see what we want and understand what's really important to us as individuals, sometimes that next step that we thought was the right next step actually isn't. And I won't share what she's doing now just to protect her identity, but she is doing something that is so in line with her as an individual and how she wants to play and how she wants to show up in the world. And the company is doing great too, with a fantastic finance director. So it's all gravy in the end, but it was quite a journey.
Yeah, and it's interesting again, coming back to it's like tying your identity too hard to something and understand really what's feed your the deepest part of your identity that's really you. There's nothing, the job is just part of that. You know, you need to have something purposefully to be active. You need to earn some money and get all that. But actually, when it comes down, it's like really these big decisions. I've seen this before as well, where people think they want to move up into a director role. And then at some point, either they get started and they find out, oh no. Some people also look at their previous director and think, I'm not gonna enjoy that. That's not really the thing I like. I like the technical bit. I'm gonna stay at that. But not many are very good at accepting that. So that was a brilliant move from them because, as you said, they've saved a lot of time and money and frustration, because that would be evidently very quickly that was the right person probably in the wrong seat.
She would have been awesome. She would have done the job, but would she have burned out? Would she have ended up not having a great impact? Who knows? But it's interesting journey.
What are some of the common challenges you see as you go in and work with people in hospitality right now? I'm thinking about leaders. What are the typical things they're coming up with? Because it's been quite a journey up to now. And I was together with some hospitality people yesterday, and it just feels like it's not become, I don't know if that's reality or if that's suffering in our minds, but it does feel like it's become easier to run hospitality. It has not been that, still quite frictionful after the pandemic. And a lot of pressure in many organizations.
Yeah. I guess I'm seeing this. I think it's really unknown, the world at the moment. You've got digital, technology, AI, you've got, political shifts, you've got social shifts, you've got cultural changes, you've got environmental changes, and it's really hard to operate in uncertainty. And particularly as an operator, and I know as an operator, because, I think, if your foundation is an operator, even when you get to CEO, sometimes you might call yourself an operator, and I will always call myself an operator, even now, because that's what I've done for the last part of my life. But as an operator, it can be really hard to operate in uncertainty unless we listen to the voices of others. And I think it's such a great opportunity to really tune in to the people around us, the people that are coming up, that through the ranks, that kind of, reverse mentoring piece of when we can surrender and we're not in control. Because, I coach quite a lot around moving from control into confidence. And the difference between those two are this force-based energy that comes from operating in control, and this power-based energy when we operate in confidence. And when we're in control, we can stifle people. We can feel like we're on a travelator every day that we can't quite get off. We can micromanage people. We show up. It's an energy, that you feel when you're in control. And, you can get some great results from operating in control. But when you're in confidence, and that confidence where you show up and you're open and you've surrendered, you get all the opportunities because you're ready to receive. You see the innovation comes, the way of doing things differently because you're in confidence with yourself and your own, your own purpose. So when you move from that control into confidence, then you can really start to listen to people. Then you can start to innovate, and then you can start to grow businesses. so yeah, operating in this uncertainty because of all of those, the unknown world that we're in. And I don't, there are always going to be times when I don't know, is it the Good to Great book where he talks about, there's always, should we do things differently in the current economic climate, and people have been saying that for years. When there's always a change, is like, should we do? No, the human design is human design. We're always going to be this. We should always be focusing on our people. But it does feel like it's this level of uncertainty and unknown is quite different. So being able to surrender, listen to our people, and really be guided, versus doing what we've always done and getting the same result is not going to serve us.
Yeah, it's really interesting, the whole thing about control, because I think it's in the last 5 years, the pandemic was really the learning point for me around control. You can't force anything. If it's people, the situation, you can't control that, but you can control how you feel and how you show up and you make sure it's the best version that shows up every day. And even when the days are not good, you find a way to manage to get to that, the best version of yourself. And I had a guest on the podcast called Dr. Edward Hess, and he talked about more like from an AI point of view that one of the biggest things human can do for themselves right now is actually making themselves ready for this. And that's actually working on yourself and, your own self leadership. So that's everything about your own thought patterns, how you control anger, all these kind of things, because it's just going to be more spaghetti before actually, and you can't figure it out. You have to accept, I can't figure it out and I don't have to figure it out. What I need to do is to figure myself out and manage that and keep that I think it's Stephen R. Covey, you probably know this, that talks about you have to sharpen the saw, I think he says.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what's about your own personal saw. And that's where you should invest now to actually go through these enormous shift that is in the world. We shouldn't underestimate. We are always continue like nothing has happened. There's some huge things happening.
Yeah. Yeah. You reminded me of that. You can't, there's so much that you can't control, but you can control how you react to it. The world keeps turning. How we respond to it is what we can control.
Yeah. And you might sometimes not be able to control how you react, but then you can learn from that and then, do less of it in the future, because you will drop, we all lose our shit sometimes. And that's quite normal when we are under pressure and a lot is changing. I thought it's really interesting. I wanted to talk with you a bit about also, what is, if you're looking at the pressures there is in the industry right now, what would you like to see disappear? If you could take your magic wand and say, let's get rid of that problem for the industry, and then we'll get enough air to move a bit forward.
Yeah. I mean, I can't help but think all these, it's so difficult to turn a decent profit in our businesses currently. So which brings into even sharper focus the importance of great leadership. It's like having everyone that can just operate at full capacity. And I mean full capacity is like true to themselves, not the 100 hours a week job. So to remove some of that financial pressure that's making it particularly difficult to turn a profit, and therefore puts us into reaction mode rather than being proactive and kind of the labor saving mode and the, cutting rather than growing. If I could remove some of that financial pressure from businesses, then that's what I would do to help give some breathing space.
Yeah, and I think the profitability, because again, everything comes from that. A healthy business in good to great, they talk about, doesn't matter how great the thing is you're doing. If you don't turn a profit, you can't maintain it and you will not last for decades, which is about when you're building a business and you can't take care of your people in the end. And then no people, no business in principle. And that's often where you see when the people bit start to go over the cliffs, the rest of the business follows very quickly. When the manager starts to run out of the door and so on, there starts a ripple effect. And then, you can save a business many times, but it will never It will never heal and come back to what it was.
Right.
Seen many of those. How do you show up yourself every day, Pro? Because you are in a very demanding position. Because I know how it is to do that job. I've done it myself for some years. There's a lot of people that want something from you, and you're giving a lot. How do you show up every day?
I think
Or how do you prepare yourself? I think that's a better way of
a
asking.
lot of it is going into the week and the days really intentionally, knowing what I would like to achieve and the impact that I would like to have. So being really structured with that approach. One thing I'm really protective over with my time is making sure that I have a solid morning routine. And I remember years ago saying to my coach, you know, I can't fit it all in. You know, I want to be able to do all of this stuff and feel like I'm really looking after myself and nurturing and, you know, working on that, the most important relationship, which is the one I have with myself. That is my most important relationship. And I remember saying to her, I just don't have the time. And she said to me, get up earlier. And I was like, what? And she said, get up earlier. She said, if you can't fill your cup first thing in the morning before the world starts, then you are going to be in fight or flight. And I was, you know, I'd wake up in the morning, I'd sit up in bed, I'd look at the daily sales, I'd get in the shower, I'd do all the stuff with the kids, and I'd get on the tube and then I'd be answering emails all the way in. And that was like that cyclical. So I did. And I started getting up at 5:30 in the morning. And now I'm always up before 6. And the what, like, this is the one thing I would just, like, I'm so protective over that time to be up before the world starts.
Yeah.
I get up in the morning, I have a cold shower for 2 minutes. Then after that, I'm doing some journaling and setting my intentions. I'm doing some meditation, then I exercise. My kids know not to come anywhere near me before 7 o'clock in the morning because a much better mum will turn up. A much better mum will turn up if I have taken my time to set my intentions, decide who I want to be for the day. So that's really how I make sure that I am clean from the inside, if you like, and I'm ready and I go in intentionally. And the other thing really is also, before every coaching session, I did it before this one, I do a superhero pose. And it just helps set me. I did a bit of dancing to your advice, do dancing before the podcast. So I listened to a really bad 80s tune and which got me going. And then I did a superhero pose, which is just hands on hips for 2 minutes and just imagining that I am the only person that can do the next thing that I'm going to do, whether that's coming on a podcast, whether that's being in a room with a client, because that is such a huge responsibility. Even if I wasn't being paid, and I had to do a lot of pro bono stuff before I could, you know, because you have to build up your accredited, your hours, etc. Even before I was being paid, it's such a huge responsibility to be able, and a privilege too, to be given the opportunity to really help somebody on their career journey. So I have to make sure that I turn up as the cleanest person in the room and I'm ready and I'm present and I'm there for them and I'm with them and I've left everything else behind me.
I love the superhero pose. I never thought about it that way. I learned at some point and I can't grasp what it is right now. So when I go into something very important, I like really have those 2 minutes as well where I just stand and do like this on my chest. And I think it's actually from the Wolf of Wall Street. And I was thinking, why is he doing that? And I looked it up. And actually what you do, you're intentional in setting yourself up for success because you get this warrior kind of call that you're ready, you're the chosen one. And then if you think about how the New Zealand rugby team shows up to their match, they also set the intention, you know, what kind of energy. And it really works, you know. And I don't do everything, but it's like sometimes I do that. And I like the warrior thing because you can do that anywhere. You know, people will not think, what the hell is he doing? I've been standing on King's Cross doing this before I went into a meeting, you know, and people thought, what the fuck is he doing, this guy? Is there anything wrong? No. I'm preparing for something, you know. So but again, so yeah, I really love that. And I've totally forgot that actually. And and then sometimes things, even though you know it's a good practice, slips out. And I'm really also like you, early riser, part of the 5 a.m. club around there. It could be 5:30, depending on, and then early bed as well. And then I have what I do in the evening. I don't know if you have an evening ritual. I need to switch off the day and then almost set the intention for tomorrow and then dream on it, because then I'm even better to, if my morning routine will be interrupted by kids, I can manage that because I've already done a bit of it. But I love that. Love that. I know you read books, Sarah. Is there any books you give to anyone 9 out of 10 times? Is that a specific book, and which book is it and why?
Every one of my clients, when as part of our, I hate the word onboarding, I need to come up with a different word for it, but every time we start working together, I gift them a wellbeing journal, which just helps kind of set the tone. So that's the one that I give out 9 times out of 10 is, and it's like, you set a positive affirmation for the day. And there's, 3 intentions. Then there's a bit of journaling. And at the end of the day, there's, celebrate some wins. What are you grateful for? And just a bit of journaling too. And the journaling, just having the opportunity where we give ourselves some time every day to see our thoughts on paper. There's that expression, I write so I can hear myself think. And these are all, it's like mindfulness, they're all ways, all of these structures are here to help us be able to see our minds with a helicopter view. And then we can start to become our ultimate scientists, really understand how we're showing up, how we might be getting in our own way. And those books are really, I had a client who, they're branded, like you have your initials put on the front of them. And he turned up to a coaching set. He was his first one, and he said, "Thanks for the book." I said, "You're very welcome." He went, "I'm not fucking using it." It was like, I said, "Why?" And he said, "It's just not for me, not for me. My wife loves it, by the way, and I'm not using it." And I was just like, "That's a really interesting response. Thanks for." And I'm like, I'm just letting it go. Anyway, then a couple of weeks ago, he sent me a message. So I sometimes think these coaching programs that we can do can be quite transactional. So I allow or have created a space where clients can contact me at their will. That can be a 9-minute voice note. It's been a record once, or an email or a message just to get in contact, because I want to. It feels too formal to say we're going to meet once a month and you can't contact me in between, because, you want to share those successes. You want to have the in the moment coaching. You want to have that quick call before an interview or after a difficult meeting. Anyway, he sent me a message, the guy who had said he was never going to use the journal, and said, "Can we talk tomorrow? Because I've got a few things I want to talk through." And he was going through a particularly difficult time with some negative patterns that he was going through. I said, "Yes." So I sent in my diary, he booked in a call. And by the time we got on the call, he said, "I don't need this call anymore." And I said, "Why?" He said, "I used my journal." He said, "I used my journal and I listened to that affirmation tape." And I'm like, it does, like, you can't force people to do these things, but eventually they do tend to, with a fair wind and the right direction and the right environment, tend to pick it up in their own time. And that's what coaching's about. It's not tell. It's about people coming to the answers themselves, and he came to the answer himself there.
I love that because sometimes also is, again, you didn't judge it, you just let it have its life, and then it's very interesting. I did that. Somebody gave me it was actually 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I've been given that by my boss at a very young age. And I think I looked at it. So, what's this? I don't need that. And then I took it home. But thank you. I was quite arrogant. Probably he was very calm about it. And then it was like 5 years later, I meet this book again. And I thought, I have this book. So I meet it in university, because there was a teacher that wanted us to, part of the semester was about this. And again, I thought, what the hell? This nonsense again. I was in my early 20s, very aggressive, wanted to conquer the world. Not the person, as we talked about earlier, that is today, that's for sure. But then I was forced to do it because we had to go up and do an exam in it. And then I actually had to call my ex-boss and tell him, I actually have read the book now. I missed out on a lot of catching up, and I think it was 4 years later, at university. But yeah, and he did exactly the same. No judgment. And I said, I'm so glad that you're still supporting me on the journey and everything that you really did, because I was probably quite rude. I said, but it's really interesting. I had a similar, but that book has now part of my books that really, touched me, is that's one of them. It's and you're going to keep coming back to it. I've been back to it this year, reading a chapter in it, because you can never become too good to these things in 7 Habits. You can only always become better. Yeah, that was a bit of a side road, but I just thought it was so interesting from your story.
And I love that though, because that was the experience that you needed, right? To just that gap, there's some richness in that story, right? Of knowing that what was that resistance? That's the journey, actually, isn't it? Was the resistance nothing to do with the book? It's never the thing, is it?
Yeah, and it's like that again, then you're back to confidence, like being too overconfident, almost like unbeatable elite soldier, nothing can stop me. And then you experience some things and then, find out, okay, you have a lot to learn. And then, but it was not too late. It's never too late, as I say. You can always learn and get better. What is the one question, Sarah, you wished I've asked you? But I didn't. And what would the question be and why? And the answer, of course.
I think that, what is, if you were to ask me, what is my underlying belief on why do I do this and why do I believe coaching and mentoring is important? And it is because I have this strong belief that we all have the ability to be extraordinary. Every single one of us has the ability to be extraordinary. And we also have the ability to get in our own way sometimes too. And to be able to show somebody, anyone, just that the richness you get and how nourishing it can be to be on that growth journey and know that you are improving. But that's, they quite often say that, our purpose is often in the rearview mirror. We look at it, we're 90 years old in our rocking chair and we'll go, that was why I was here. That's why I came here. And I really, this is not ego. This is about having an impact on people's lives. And we all have the ability to do it. We all have the ability to be able to coach and impact people to a lesser or greater extent. And knowing that we all have the extraordinary, with the ability to be extraordinary is the thing, is what gets me up in the morning.
Okay, I love that. I have to put something. So I have this book I'm using. It's not me. It's from Happy by Stuart, and the Happy team that has made this book. And it's like a planner in a way. And people that can't listen in, it's like a planner day for day. And you have to prioritize eating your frogs and so on. But every week you need to do a weekly summary. And actually, one of the things where I often think I fell short, even thing is like, have you thanked, coached, and empowered anyone this week? And it's actually a very difficult, because then you have to think back and actually sometimes say, oh, fuck, I've just been running 600 miles an hour this week and forgot actually to stop up. Or it could be your son, it could be your wife, whatever it is. It could be your husband. But actually that makes you aware if you are actually helping people on the journey, because that's for free in a way, and it comes back in tenfold. So I just thought, if you can put that in your weekly reflection, anyone, I will ask myself that question, because that's in principle one of the most powerful thing I think with that thing. And I just use that, and I've used others just to have some structure, so I know I do the stopping up and reflecting. My to-do always explode anyway, and I have to reorganize my frogs every day, and that's just how it is, leadership and so on. But yeah, I think that's really, really powerful what you said there. And I'll just encourage people to ask themselves that question, because you will find out you're often falling short, even though you think you're helping a lot.
And it drives a behavior, doesn't it? That is the structure that drives a behavior, because you're reflecting and you'll be like, oh, I want to do different. I want to be better at this tomorrow. I will impact this person, And I've seen for years, us all walking into bars and restaurants on our phones, when, we put your phone away. eye contact with the person you're going in to see and ask them something. Remember that thing about them. Clive Shlee and Pret was awesome at that. He was so amazing. Like every time out before we went into a shop, he used to say to me, "What's the purpose of this visit?" Remember the first time he asked me, I was just like, I don't know, to impress you was really what I thought, was to impress you. But as he coaches, you just go in intentionally going, actually, the purpose of this visit is to congratulate the team on their record-breaking week, or to speak to that team member because her parents have been in an earthquake back in her, thousands of miles away. Like, you go in intentionally, then you can impact. If you go in on your phone thinking about your email and stuff, then there's only so much you can do to limit people. But I love what you mentioned there. It is about changing a behavior because you're reflecting.
Yeah, and the ability to see people in this world we live in with all the disruptions of phones and so on is like so critical. And I was reading something in a book I found on my father-in-law's boxes. I can't remember exactly the book, but that doesn't really matter. It's around Bill Clinton, and apparently there's a biography piece in there where they talk about what was actually his super strengths, and it was actually to see people and actually make people feel that he's seen them. I don't know if he's seen them. I don't know if that was just a trick, but he was very good at that ability to meet people where they are. And I think, if you think back on some of the most powerful leaders you meet in your life, sees you and see that potential in you and then help you on. And I can come up with lots of anecdotes on my own journey because I've been lucky. There's people that seen me and taken me on. And that's really a super skill as a leader in operation. We talk about people in the mid-management before. Try to practice that and you will see different results in your restaurant straight away. Yeah. Great, Sarah. I really enjoyed the conversation, but we unfortunately come to the end. Where can people find out more about you, and where can they connect with you? What is the right place to go?
So on LinkedIn, Sarah Clark, Sarah with an H, Clark without an E. And my website, 9yardscoaching.co.uk, and all of my telephone numbers, email addresses are on both of those places, LinkedIn and the website.
I send you power and energy for the journey ahead and helping people to find the best version of themselves.
Thank you, Michael. It's been a real pleasure. Really appreciate it.